Let's welcome Isabelle Marquis, who's going to be our moderator tonight. We're very lucky and happy to have her with us. She's a communication and food innovation strategist with over 20 years of experience in nutrition, culinary marketing, and communications. So without any more from me, let's welcome Isabelle, who's gonna introduce all of our wonderful speakers that we'll have tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Ali, and thanks to all the Regeneration Canada team.
Webinar is about direct consumer models.
Oh, I think there's someone who has his mic open. Yeah, thank you. So I'm Isabelle Marquis, and well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm honored to be here with you and to present you our wonderful speakers. I have the pleasure to be joined by three amazing women. It's interesting because we are all in different provinces, and I can see all those messages popping in the chat that you are also all our attendees from everywhere across Canada. So let me present you our speakers briefly before I ask them to tell us more about their organizations and company. So first, I would like to introduce Tannis Axten. With her husband, Derek, Tannis Axten owns and operates Axten Farms, a multi-generational family farm in the beautiful rolling hills of southern Saskatchewan. On their land, the Axtens grow pulses, oilseeds, and ancient grains with a focus to be loyal to the soil. By using regenerative practices, such as reducing disturbance, intercropping, keeping the soil covered, and maintaining living roots as long as possible, Tannis and Derek worked to create a healthy environment for their soil life. The Axtens built a food-grade seed cleaning plant and flour mill on their property, which enables them to offer their grains directly to companies looking for single-source products. Their goal is to create an environment that brings back life, not only to the soil, but also to their community. So Tannis, welcome, and thank you very much to be there tonight. Yes, we have some amazing pictures of all our speakers. Now let me present you Rachel Lightfoot. So as part of the fourth generation of the Lightfoot family to farm the land where the Lightfoot and Wolfville Winery sits today, Rachel Lightfoot is passionate about keeping the land in agriculture. She is particularly interested in sustainable farming systems. Her background in the wine industry spans roles in wine production, hospitality, and marketing. In addition to nurturing nearly 40 acres of grape wines for wine production, Lightfoot and Wolfville operates as a working farm, growing ingredients for the winery's farm-to-table restaurant and full-service events venue. Spectacular views of Cape Blomidon provide the ideal background for guests to connect with the distinctive terroir of Nova Scotia. I don't know if we have any images of that beautiful backdrop, but I've seen a few, and it's a really nice place to go and to be. So thank you, Rachel, for being there. And last but not least, we have with us tonight Sheena Russell, who is the founder of Made with Local, a Canadian snack company that's on a mission to raise the bar for sustainable snacking. For over a decade, Sheena has led Made with Local by crafting irresistibly delicious, and I can confirm because I'm a buyer of those beautiful products, and it's really nice, very well made. So crafting irresistibly delicious, nourishing foods while cultivating community impact in partnership with Canadian farmers and producers. As a certified B Corp, Sheena is committed to leading her company with ethical, sustainable sourcing, prioritizing health of people, the planet, and local communities. Welcome, Sheena. So this being said, I think you certainly agree with me that we have a wonderful group of speakers tonight. Before I go further, I would like to let them open their mic and present to us or tell us a little bit more about their company or their farm. Tannis, I would like to start with you, if you may.
Thank you, Isabelle. And thanks to the Regeneration Canada team. This Stories of Regeneration campaign has been very inspiring, and I'm excited to be part of it. I don't know, you did a really good read of my bio there, Isabelle. I don't have a whole lot more to tell you other than I am a born and raised farm kid. And my husband and I have been farming on his family farm. We're the fourth generation. We started in 2002. And it was a beautiful farm to start, but we seen there was improvement, and we decided we didn't want to just sustain, but we wanted to regenerate. Motto of loyal to the soil. So everything we do on our farm, we really think about how it impacts the soil and all the life that lives within it. So things we do to improve our soil health are things like planting diverse crops, reducing soil disturbance, reducing our synthetic inputs, and always making our soil ecosystem a priority. And we've seen great results. We've seen increased water efficiency, increased soil organic matter, and a dramatic increase in our biological activity. So our goal is we want to have healthy soil so that we can grow and produce healthy food. So as we got excited about the grains we were growing, we decided in order to be able to sell direct into a food market, we'd build a food grade seed cleaning plant. So that was completed in 2020. And of course, with clean grains, we thought the next progression would be to install a flour mill. So just in 2023, our unique flour mill and packaging line was up and running. So we're very excited to have a unique impact mill that allows us to mill whole grain flour with great flavor and nutrition. People have been really excited about the functionality of it, and we're excited to get it out to people. We felt it's a great way to not only add value to our farm, but also to our community, as it allows us to have employees year round. So yeah, improving the health of our soil, our farm, our family, and our community world, that's our ultimate passion. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Tannis, for this introduction. Rachel, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your winery and all your experience?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, and thank you to Regeneration Canada for having me, and for everyone for being here online this evening. I see my sheep there on the screen, which got me very excited. So Lightfoot and Wolfville, we are a farm winery. We're located in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia. And we are a biodynamic winery. So wine is our primary product, but as Isabelle mentioned in the intro, we are operating as a full working farm. We also have animals, livestock such as sheep, cattle that help support our biodynamic agriculture practices. So similar to Tannis, there's a big focus on soil health in all that we're doing. Biodynamics would be a form of regenerative and organic agriculture. It is a unique kind of farming practice into itself. We are certified organic as well as biodynamic. But there's a lot of crossover with regenerative practices, such as composting, not using synthetic herbicides, pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, these types of practices, and really doing all that we can to encourage biodiversity within the whole vineyard system. So if you think of a vineyard, inherently it's kind of a monoculture. You're farming one crop. Here with the biodynamic model, we're looking to create as much diversity within our farm ecosystem as possible, with the ultimate goal of creating soil health and hopefully in the end, a better quality product as a result, healthier soil, healthier vines, and hopefully that translates to what's in the bottle and what's in the glass. And of course, the health of the people that are here as well. We are, as Isabelle mentioned, it is a multi-generational family farm. So we are living here. We are, working here with the team. So that is, of course, a consideration with our practices. My sisters and I would be the fourth generation to farm this current piece of land where we are today. We work very closely with my father and his wife, Jocelyn. We first started planting vines on the property to diversify the farm back in 2009. So that's when we went from being farmers to grape growers and got involved in the wine industry. And the business has grown from there. But prior to that, the farm had many different eras over the different generations. So my great-grandmother farmed here when my father was a child, and she had a mixed sort of market garden, some livestock, very much an inspiration to me, especially the way that she farmed for the reason why we've gone down the route with biodynamics and more regenerative practices today. She taught my dad to farm according to the lunar cycle, and she would make her own compost on the farm and shunned, chemical soil amendments. So that was really her days. When I was a child growing up here, the fields where the vineyards are today were predominantly hay fields for livestock. We had a beef cattle operation for that generation. And also where my grandfather and father were involved in supply managed poultry. So wine is really a fairly new, I guess you could say, thing for us, 2009. Nova Scotia, our wine industry in the last 30 years, the unfortunate reality of climate change is that things are getting warmer here for sure. And so the opportunity to grow wine grapes has presented itself, and the quality of the wines here have been increasing over that time, and so an industry has emerged. Today we're farming about 40 acres of wine grapes, and we also work with about 10 local grape growing partners who we buy grapes from as well. So we do work with a broader network in terms of sourcing grapes from them. Yeah, so that's a little bit about Lightfoot and Wolfville, and thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Sheena, I don't see you, but I know you're close.
Yes.
Yes, if you could tell us a little bit more about Made with Local.
Absolutely. So I am also a born and raised farm kid, although not a farmer now. I live here in Nova Scotia, another blue noser, along with Rachel on the call today. And my company is packaged food. So we make these really beautiful, delicious and nourishing soft-baked energy bars using lots of ingredients that we source from Canadian farmers and food producers. So we started back in 2012 at a farmer's market where, at the time I was in my mid-20s and had all kinds of free time before I had kids who you might hear like banging on this. I'm in the basement hiding from my children right now because it's bedtime. So if you hear them banging around, that's what's going on. But yeah, so started this farmer's market business back in 2012, making these healthy little bars using ingredients that I was sourcing from other farmers and food producers at the market, like local honey, oats, locally made nut butters, dried berries, and really, using the business of Made with Local to tell the stories of the farmers and food producers that we were partnered with. And that, ultimately was and continues to be really the fuel for my fire in this business. I never set out to be a snack foods entrepreneur. My background, again, after being a farm kid, but before being a snack foods business owner, I did a degree in environmental science at Dalhousie. So I figured I would have landed in that in that industry, and I had every intention to do so, but this little snack foods company has taken me elsewhere. But today you can find us at 3,000 grocery stores all across the country. You can see here, we've got the picture of Costco there. We're in pretty much every major grocery store. And this past year, I guess it was last year, technically, we commissioned our own in-house bakery in rural Nova Scotia. So again, not too far from where Rachel's based. We're in Windsor, just outside the Annapolis Valley. And it's really enabled us to get even closer to our farmers and food producers, and work with folks in a more direct way than ever by really owning that value chain and looking towards doing even vertical integration of some processing in-house. So it was last year as well, finally having space to run a warehouse, that we started partnering with regenerative organic farmers to source the number one ingredient in all of our foods, which is oats. So we're bringing them in by the truckload now, and have been really, it's inspired us to continue pushing towards finding, the most sustainable and delicious ingredients that we can get our hands on, and packaging them up in our delicious bars and getting them out into the world in this very direct consumer kind of way.
Thank you so much. And I think that's the perfect introduction to the theme that we have for tonight's webinar. Just to make things clear, regeneration or regenerative practices are at the heart of all those webinars that Regeneration Canada is presenting. Tonight, we won't talk so much about soil health, although it's an important and a central element of regenerative practices. But if you are interested in soil health, there has been, I'm not sure if it was the first or second webinar, but if you go on Regeneration Canada website, you will find on a previous webinar a full hour-and-a-half conversation on that topic more specifically. But tonight we will focus more on what we called regenerating the market. So trying to make our food system more lean and have more direct connections between all those amazing people that grow food and the final product that you find on our shelves, on the store shelves. Before we dive into our discussion, I would like to take just a few minutes, and I will try to be as brief as possible because there's so many things I want to discuss with our speakers. But I thought it would be interesting and relevant to share with you a short portrait of our food system, how it actually works, and why is it so complicated when we would instinctively think it should be simple. So what you have on the screen right now is a very simplified illustration of how it works. So you have farms, the manufacturers that will process the ingredients, make something out of it, package it, then it's distributed throughout the world or just in a city, whatever, and it gets to your grocery store, you buy it, and that's it. So again, this is a hyper simplified illustration of our food system. The reality that we don't see on this illustration is that all of these steps are actually repeated a bunch of times, not to say many, many times, especially if you're looking at a very highly processed food. So there are actually way more intermediates at every single step until the final product gets on the shelves. To illustrate that very simply, I would like to share with you two examples. So the first one is a yogurt that I'm pretty sure all of you know. It's Yoplait creamy strawberry flavor, something very classic that has been on our shelves for a very long time. If you take a quick look at the ingredient list, you will see that there is nothing in that list. Although it's a simple food product, there is nothing in that list besides sugar. And I would say even sugar, we could argue on that. None of those ingredients that has not been processed and did not go through 2, 3, 4, 10 processing steps before it gets to Yoplait's plant to make this yogurt. And it's a simple food. My second example for you is Oreo cookies. Who never tasted Oreo cookies? Again, have a quick look at the ingredient list. There is nothing in there besides salt that hasn't been processed a bunch of times. So, and maybe just quickly, a very, what I think is a fun fact about Oreo cookies. Do you know how many Oreo cookies are being made every year? I can't give you the time to answer in the chat, but I will give you the answer straight. There are enough Oreo cookies that are being produced every year to circle the Earth 5 times. That's a lot of cookies. So knowing this fact, now look at the ingredient list again, and you can start to understand the complexity, how many people need to be involved, how many experts and companies and processors are behind the scene and make this happen and this possible. So on the next slide, the next page, you will see this crazy illustration is, to my point of view, what all processing steps and transformation to make Oreo cookies probably look like. This notably explains, at least to my point of view, why we encourage people to eat foods that are made locally and the least processed possible. Yes, it's better for your health, but it's also better in every possible way, notably on an environmentally the environmental point. And no wonder also why we lost track of the humans behind the food, and even farmers lost track, or most of them have no idea where what they grow goes, because the more processed the food is, the more complex it is. So to finish, on this last slide, if you don't mind to change the screen, thank you. Don't even try to read what's on this. That's not the point, but that's one of the best illustration of our global food system that I could find. And it shows you on the left side, everything related to the supply chain and farming. And on the right side, everything related to the food demand. And as you can see quickly with all those arrows and lines everywhere, everything is interconnected. So honestly, to me, to make this happen is pure magic. But it's way too complex, so we can't sustain that. And when there's anything that happens, a drought, flood, a strike, or pandemic, like we've just been through, or a war, like what's going on in Ukraine, for example, it has a direct impact on the whole change and the whole industry. So no wonder why food companies, distributors, and even farmers, most of them don't want to change anything in the way they do business, because it's so complicated and it has so many consequences that status quo feels way more comfortable. But luckily, there is a bunch of daring, courageous people that decided to lead the change and to try to lighten this model and make connections more direct. And I have the pleasure to have 3 of them with me tonight. So I'm stopping there. I won't go further. But let's dive into our discussion and conversation. So I would like to start with a good news. Yes, it's possible to shorten the supply chain and to build direct connections. So I'd like to ask the 3 of you, and some have already opened the discussion on this, but tell us a little bit more about your current business model and what made you decide, was it from the start, or what made you decide to have a lean model, or as lean as possible? Sheena, maybe I can start with you.
Yeah, so our business model, in the world of consumer packaged goods, that's where I live, largely doing business with big grocery chains but a fair amount of direct to consumer through e-commerce as well. There are too many layers in that situation as well, right? You so often are dealing with brokers and distributors, and it's a complex world, much like that big net that you just showed us on that last slide. So we, right from the get-go, we really prioritize working directly with farmers and food producers, and prioritizing relationships that we could, cut the middle people. And that has been something that I think we established a really good culture of in how we manage our supply chain right from the get-go. And we actually apply that same logic to, from our point of manufacture out into the market as well, because honestly, it's just a more profitable model, and something that really, relationships are so important. And we see that being something that we really want to hold ourselves, whether it be on the sales side towards retailers or with our farmers and food producers. The more direct and the more direct they can be, and the more trust you can build in those relationships over time, the more resilient your business is going to be. And we definitely experienced that in these last few years.
I would bet. And do you feel that somehow it also gives you more, I would say, control over the ingredients that you buy? You actually know better what you're buying by connecting directly with the people that grow the food or the ingredients that you buy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the ability to then educate the consumer about the things that we're learning about those ingredients. If we were like another energy bar brand and we're sourcing our ingredients out of a big distributor catalog, checking off the different lot numbers and just placing one big PO for the 20 different ingredients that we needed to fill our warehouse, that's fine. That's what most brands are doing. But we really do, and this is what makes us different, is that we really do prioritize learning a lot about our supply chain, learning a lot about the farmers and food producers that are growing our inputs, and being their champions like out into the world. So yeah, absolutely. It gives us a lot of control. And again, I always come back to this point of like trust and transparency being so important.
Thank you. Tannis, on your side, I know you've changed your business model over time, or at least maybe not changed, but made it evolve. Can you tell us a little bit more about that transformation, and why did you decide to make those changes?
Yeah, well, I feel like we're constantly making changes, but I like to say we're flexible. So, we were moving some grains, but a lot of, people using ingredients didn't always know what to do with whole grains, but there seemed to be a lot of interest in flour. So that's when we decided to put the flour mill on our farm. It's always been a little bit of our dream as it was to be able to mill our own grains. There's so much you can do with flour. But first we jumped the gun a little bit, and because we had this interest, and so we were telling people everything we were going to have, and then it took us longer, during COVID and whatnot, for manufacturing, getting all the equipment put together. So we kind of put that on hold, and now we have the flowers and we have samples. So we are just getting those out to people, trying to get them excited, looking, for people who really care about their ingredients, like made with local, instead of, going and sourcing. A lot of times if you're buying flour or grains, it's a bunch of people's together and you don't know what you're getting. Whereas everything that comes from our farm, like I say, we've grown it, we've cleaned it, we've milled it, and we can tell you everything about it.
I guess a bit like for Sheena, but on the other side of the wall or the window, do you feel it gives you a bigger sense of control over what's done with what you grow, and maybe a certain sense of pride, I guess.
Oh, for sure. That's a big part of it. Control. When you have to source these different processes, whether it's getting your grain cleaned, or for something like spelt that has to be dehulled, how many times it would have to leave the farm, where it goes. No one loves your product as much as, like, we've put a lot of work into growing. We've watched grow, we've harvested. I mean, it's our baby. So we put a lot of love into it, and we want to find people who would love to have it.
And there's certainly on many aspects a lot of added value to your product and to what you do, and we'll dive into this a little bit later. But Rachel, on your end, you've already covered or told us a lot about your business model in the presentation, but maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more about the kind of relationship that you're having, because you decided down the road to introduce the farm to table concept, so you're not just a winery. So how is it, and what kind of relationships do you have with your customers and clients in general?
Yeah, so when we first started the business, we released our first products under the Lightfoot and Wolfville brand in 2015, and that was at the local farmers markets and one private wine store in Halifax called Bishop's Cellar. So our business model has changed and evolved quite a bit over the years. Wine is a product that takes a really long time, you know, from conception, planting to market. So a bit of that was the natural sort of evolution of the business, maturing over the different years. But in the early years, as we were looking at, you know, what business model made sense for us as a winery, we looked at our site, our home farm, and we realized that it had some natural kind of advantages, I guess, as it will for a direct to consumer model of winery. So one that, you know, welcomes visitors to the tasting room. The location being one of those, we are kind of ideally located within the you know, close proximity to the town. We also have a beautiful view that we've always enjoyed, but we thought that others might enjoy as well. So you know, expanding that was certainly you know, part of the thinking. And we really believed in and still believe in agritourism as a way to grow rural Nova Scotia. We live in a small town. I am 33 this year, and growing up, I didn't always know if I'd be able to sustain a livelihood here, you know, have a career here, because you know, it's small, and there aren't always ample opportunities in some of these more rural areas. So we were really excited about the opportunity of building something that would add jobs to that local economy. And that was sort of philosophically the reason, you know, behind the decision to embrace a fairly robust direct-to-consumer model. We certainly weren't restaurateurs, which was a big learning curve for us. That's a whole other you know, realm. And luckily we have expanded our team, and we have people with expertise and experience in these fields that have been instrumental in doing that successfully. But yeah, it was really that paired with the thought that philosophically we look at wine sort of as food, and our wines, especially coming from a cool climate, they're naturally really high acidity wines. So they pair quite well with food, and we believe that's the best way to showcase them alongside ingredients from the region, highlighting, you know, what we can do here well in season, ingredients wise, from our own farm as well as other local farms. So that was a really driving force behind the model. Now it has changed. When we first opened here in 2017, we sold the majority of our product for the next subsequent few years through our tasting room on site. And then COVID happened. And of course, you know, people weren't able to come to wineries for, you know, for a while. And so we had to really quickly pivot our business model. We were selling some wholesale at that time, but we were largely focused towards on-farm direct-to-consumer sales. Of course, online, we built the business online during those years. And nowadays we have about a 40% direct-to-consumer, 60% wholesale. That's how our sales break down for 2023 fleshed out anyways. And like I said, it's sort of always evolving. So we'll see what 2024 brings for us. But these days, I love direct-to-consumer for all the same reasons that Sheena and Tannis have mentioned. You know, there's no better way to build that relationship with your customer, to have that brand loyalty. There's no question in my mind that that's the best way to do that. But especially from the COVID years, I learned a new appreciation for having a bit of diversity, not having all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. And I think Sheena used the words resilience, which that is, a big focus for me. We're in a business that's very impacted by climate change, by weather, by Mother Nature. And so building in as much resilience wherever we can is kind of the name of the game for me looking to the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and certainly the best way to go, especially in those circumstances. Clearly, there are a lot of advantages and positive impacts of having a more direct business model with your consumers and customers, but I'm sure there's a bunch of challenges also. Could you tell us a bit more about those challenges, either to sell or to buy direct compared to wholesale? I'll stay with you, Rachel, since you just opened the wholesale element and you still have 60% of your business in wholesale. So for you, what are the challenges to
Yeah, so for us, our wholesale channels would be more like offsite, so working with either distributors such as the liquor monopolies, the NSLC, LCBOs, and direct or licensees like restaurants. Our direct to consumer models would be, of course, here at the farm store. We also sell direct to consumer e-commerce, and one big challenge with that we have is we do still have some interprovincial laws as it relates to shipping alcohol, beverage alcohol across Canada. So that's one big challenge we have encountered on that side of the business. In particular, there are 4 provinces right now: Nova Scotia, BC, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, where we can, legally make that direct to consumer sale. But that's something looking to the future that I really hope we're able to build on, because it's a real challenge in terms of marketing in a world that's turning more and more to e-commerce. Shipping logistics is another big one. We're also selling a product that freezes in this time of year. So that has been interesting. Shipping can be really costly and sort of complex to navigate at times. So that has been a bit of a challenge. Of course, running the hospitality side of the business is wrought with challenge at times. Like I said, we didn't come from a restaurant background. We are farmers first and foremost. So that was a huge learning curve for us as a family and as a team, and learning how to navigate sort of consumer expectation with experiences and really provide a quality experience for our guests. Like I said, there's the advantages are that connection, but in order to do so, it can be challenging to set it up properly.
I think it's Sheena who mentioned earlier that for her, in her business model, it's more profitable to try to sell direct more. In your case, and yes, the alcohol industry in general is way, well, I would say way more complex, but it has its own complexity and specific rules. Do you also have that concern of profitability on direct? I mean, I guess shipping just one bottle at a time versus a bunch of cases is quite different.
Yeah, definitely. Wholesale would have the lower margins. That would be the challenge. One of the main challenges there would be profitability and finding, especially we do a little bit of international export, which I believe is important for helping to build the brand of Canadian wine and Nova Scotia wine, and showing that Canada is making quality wine and on a world-class level. I think that's important for the future sustainability of the industry. However, that has a lot of challenges as it relates to margin and profitability and logistics of shipping and distribution. We too would have the best profit margin selling direct to consumer.
Great. Well, for sure, whether we like it or not, the profitability aspect is always very important when you're running a business. Tannis, Sheena, any other challenges that you would like to raise before we jump to our next topic?
Just one quick challenge we found is, making changes to that big food system you showed. People are used to just going and buying the cheapest flour wherever they can buy it. They don't know where it's grown. So there's not too many farms like ours that can offer, flour that we've milled ourselves. We know everything about it. And it's just trying to get a new system so that people understand that that's possible. So, I mean, it's kind of fun and exciting, yet for a lot of people, because we are a 10,000 acre farm, we can make, we can supply a lot of flour, but a lot of the people who are used to buying a lot of flour are used to going, to the main flour brands and not thinking outside the box.
So building that that positive perception of what makes your flowers stand out from the crowd or all those generic flowers that we can find at the grocery store is clearly a challenge. And yes, I would guess for a lot of consumers and probably wholesale buyers also, they don't necessarily realize that there can be huge differences from a flower to another, not just considering what grain it comes from, but how it was harvested and grown, harvested, and milled afterwards. So this takes me to I think one of the most important and interesting aspect of selling more direct, which is traceability and transparency. Of course, if we have a model that is way more lean and flexible than what I've shown you earlier, it opens the door to more transparency, more communication, and yes, a clear traceability. What do you think are the benefits for your consumers, for your clients and customers to learn more about what you do and how you do it? Tannis, you just opened the door to that point, so I will let you start if you want.
Well, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. We've got such a huge gap between a lot of consumers and farmers. More and more generations are being removed from, a lot of times either they had a mother or a grandmother that was raised on a farm and have that connection, but it seems like we're getting farther and farther away, which is why we've always had an open door policy. We invite people to our farm, show them what we do. And I think that's the biggest thing is just, being able to make that connection.
Thanks. Sheena, what about you? Because you don't grow the ingredients that you use, but still you have that direct connections with suppliers. So what do you think are the benefits for your clients to know where the food, where the ingredients come from and how they were grown?
Yeah, so clearly this is something that's really important to me. I've built my whole company around this idea that people should care about where their food comes from, and they should, know their farmer, so to speak. So I think that Made with Local has been a bit of a magnet for people who care. Like we've really been able to build a community around that idea that knowing where your food comes from really matters. And so, that we've created this culture in the company from that belief. And yeah, I mean, I just think in this day and age where it's so easy, again, I alluded to like being a mom, I'm a busy mom with 2 little kids, and it's so easy just to kind of turn your brain off and go autopilot mode and, eat the ultra processed foods. And it's not to say that my kids don't eat mac and cheese every once in a while, because they absolutely do. But I just, it was really important to me that we were able to create something that feels like a convenience food that has a bigger purpose and a bigger impact behind it, and gives the consumer the opportunity to maybe have that little intentional moment to say, okay, this bar is delicious and it's filling me up and it's giving me the nutrients I need. And it also makes me feel connected to sustainability, to the people in my community, these farmers that I've learned about through their storytelling on social media. So I think, I guess that's really our motivation. And what we've seen is that there are a lot of Canadians that really care about that. And they've become, very, very vocal and supportive customers of ours too. So they do exist. These people who care are out there. We just gotta bring them to us.
Sure. And I would suspect that a lot of the attendees tonight are people that do care. What I really like about your story is that you make us realize that it's possible to have a convenient offer, something you don't need to cook and prepare from scratch, and still be able to trace at least a part of where it comes from and how it was made. Do you think, and be very comfortable to answer that or not, but do you think it's something that is attainable only for smaller food companies, or can bigger food manufacturers, could bigger food manufacturers do that also?
Yeah. So I have been told by many people over the life of this business, starting from like a little 5-foot farmers market table to where we are today, a multi-7-figure revenues business, that, at every step of the way of our growth, that we were going to have to give it up a little bit. And we were going to have to, dilute our values and figure out, if this mission of ours to continue to working directly with farmers and food producers was going to be something that we were going to, a hill we were going to die on, so to speak. And I love being a bit smug and to say that we got to the point that we are today really by not only continuing to honor those original values in the company, but kind of doubling down on them. Like we've been able to partner with farmers and food producers here in Nova Scotia who've grown their businesses largely, or with Made with Local being a very large part of their growing customer base, and have continued to create a more rich network of farmers that we source from here in Canada. Because one of the cool things about us scaling is that it does give us buying power now more than ever. Whenever we were farmers market table, I was buying, 1 bucket of honey from Tom and Marianne from Cosman and Whidden Honey. And we were buying, a couple kilograms of cranberries and blueberries at a time. It was just, we weren't really tipping the scales for any of these farmers, but we were, a loved customer, I like to think. But now at the size that we're at, we can use our buying power to actually impact change and have a social impact and an environmental impact with those farmers that we're working with. So that's something that, that's a muscle that we like to flex. And it's something, like I said, too, that our customers, that's a big part of why they come and choose us at snack time.
Amazing. We need more stories like yours, that's for sure. Rachel, on your end, as I mentioned in the intro, you're part of the 4th generation in your family to run your business. So you have, I wouldn't say a complex, but I would say a rich story to share. And there's a lot of marketing experts that like to say that less is more. It's better not to say too much about who you are or what you do, because at some point you will lose your consumers down the road. It's too complex. How do you market your family story and bring customers into it?
Yeah, so for me, it's something that the goal is always to do so authentically in a way that feels right to us, and sometimes it's in really subtle ways. It's one of my, favorite ways to kind of tie the family story into the business and what we do would be through our product imagery, our brand imagery. So the name of the winery itself, Lightfoot and Wolfville, it's a bit of a mouthful, but basically Lightfoot is the family name and Wolfville is the name of the place. So the name itself of the business stands for people and place. And so every time, you know, we welcome guests in, we ask if they've been there, if they'd heard of us, we get to kind of share, you know, what Lightfoot and Wolfville stands for this relationship between the land. And it's not just, you know, people as in the family, it extends, you know, to our broader team and to the community. And so we get to talk about our values in a nice, natural kind of way, extending from that. Also in our product or label imagery, we'll weave in little bits of the story so that we can, you know, talk about it in a nice kind of natural, organic way. Our cider, for example, we do make one cider that's a non-wine product. And that's a tradition that is a family tradition that was handed down from a great uncle. And so that label has some family photography and kind of a layered scrapbook on the label. And so it's a nice little way for us to kind of naturally, you know, weave in those stories. So they're not, you know, overtly in your face in a you know, a kind of a way that we wouldn't be comfortable with, but it's there and we feel like we're, you know, we are telling the story in a way that feels right to us. I'm actually working on a label right now that will be called Cuvée Evelyn. So Evelyn was my great grandmother's name, and so that wine will be a bit of a tribute to her. And so kind of similar with that, telling the stories about, you know, her time here. So little ways like that. For me, you know, we have a team of about 85 staff, so it's really important. A lot of our staff are interacting with directly with the public and telling the stories, not only the family story, but also, of course, about the products themselves. And so robust you know, education program. We have really great training program. It's something that we're doing all the time. I feel that that's really important in a way that we empower the rest of the team to be able to, you know, share stories in a way that feels comfortable to them as well, and make them
How many
own.
products do you sell?
So our portfolio is about 20 to 25 products, depending on the year. Some wines we only make in certain vintages. But yeah, that would be our full portfolio.
That's a good offer.
Yeah.
A lot to keep you busy. Tannis, on your end, traceability is something definitely key to your business. I know you track a lot of data on your farms, when the grains were planted or harvested and milled and where, etc. Why is it so important to you to track, keep note of all this information? And what do you think are the most relevant information to share with your clients to make them really get and understand and feel what makes your product different?
Yeah, a lot of our data keeping is for our own use so that it helps us make decisions in, you know, what we need to apply to a crop, records of what's been grown in different fields so we can have high diversity. And we're just starting now. We have been for the last few years, but sending then our grains for nutrient density testing. And so a lot of it is for our own research, trying to figure out what practices we're using are working the best to create the most nutrient dense grains. A lot of people assume because we grow a lot of ancient grains that we're organic. But in order to be organic, we would have to till our land. And as soil is so important to us with our fragile soils, tilling it would destroy everything that we worked so hard to accomplish. So we do use some herbicides. So we do glyphosate tests. The only time we use glyphosate is on the soil ahead of a crop. And so we do glyphosate testing, and on all of our grains, we've never had anything come back with any detectable limits. So I think it's kind of cute whenever if we're at somewhere and we're selling some flowers, people sometimes will ask, oh, is that organic? And my husband will just say, no, it's better. because we like to think, ecologically, we're really caring for our soils and benefiting our soils, yet we don't have the chemicals, which I don't know. I'm assuming that's what people who are really interested in organic, they're worried about, chemicals or residues in their food. So if we're able to accomplish that without harming our soils, that's our ultimate goal. So yeah, our data is kind of like our grain story.
Interesting. I see it's almost 7:05. Technically, I would be supposed to start switching from our conversation to a conversation with the public. I still have a few things that I would like to chat with you, but please keep sharing and sending your questions. And pour les personnes qui seraient francophones, j'ai vu qu'il y avait quelques personnes du Québec qui sont là ce soir. Si vous vouliez, dans quelques instants, si vous avez des questions que vous souhaiteriez poser en français à voix haute, ne vous gênez pas pour le faire. Il me fera plaisir de les traduire pour nos participants. Very quickly before we turn to all of our attendees, one, I think, key element about why it is so important and relevant to build closer relationships and try to simplify, I would say, our food system is the notion of trust. There's a lot of skepticism in the population in general, in the food industry in general also. And I don't blame anyone for being skeptical about everything that we hear. And there's a lot of confusion also. Being closer to, closing the gap between farmers and manufacturers and the public, I think, is key to diminish that feeling of losing control over what we eat and rebuilding that trust. I would like to ask you, education or being aware, understanding what's going on and why you're doing what you're doing, the way you're doing it is certainly key. But that education factor is not necessarily easy. What do you think is needed to close that gap, and what could help you build that trust even stronger with your clients or customers? Or maybe you feel it's already there, but for food companies in general? Like, do you think labeling or certification or anything like that would be interesting? I know there's a lot going on, notably in Europe, with new labeling options that are being developed to try to guide consumers, not just about the nutritional value of a food, but also the carbon footprint or the environmental impact in general. That's one example. I'm not saying it's something we should say, but what is needed in terms of consumer education, you think? I'm just throwing the question like that, but anyone who wants to.
It's a great question. As a consumer, I think it's really hard because there's so much out there. You hear all these different things. You hear all these key terms. And one a lot of times is regenerative. Well, what is regenerative? It's one of those hardest words to define, which I think is what makes it exciting, because for us, it's continual improvement and a journey. But you ask a lot of farmers and they'll say they're regenerative too. So what is that? So for us, we decided to become certified with a company called Regenified. They came onto our farm, spent 5 days soil sampling, looking at our soil armor, doing biological tests, which the data was great for us. But then for consumers, they know I'm not just saying I'm doing these practices. The proof is there. We went through a certification, and it was just, we're hoping that that's something that kind of helps. But it's a difficult thing to try to figure out.
Absolutely. Sheena, Rachel, anything you'd like to add to this?
One
at
thing
this point.
I can add
sorry.
one quick anecdote, I guess, from the wine industry perspective, as it relates to kind of transparency around labeling. And that's something that as an industry we're working on here in Nova Scotia. There are, of course, there's Nova Scotia farm wineries, which are growing grapes here in Nova Scotia and making Nova Scotia wines. We also have some Nova Scotia wines that would be from imported grape juice from elsewhere. And I think that's something that I'm really passionate about consumers knowing the difference of, because there is, of course, a much big different impact as it relates to the region on those two. So making sure that's clear in our labeling is something that we're working on at the moment as an industry. So having some sort of symbol that indicates, you know, this is 100% Nova Scotia. We do have an Appalachian wine called Tidal Bay, which is the first step to that. So that is indicating 100% locally grown content. And there's also certain qualitative standards that have to be met, but we need to do more work on extending that into the rest of the products so that it's really clear, because we have consumers that do care. So thank you to Sheena for kind of building that culture around you know, people asking where their food comes, because it's extending definitely to wine. And I think we're seeing that across society right now, which is really great. People are caring about where things come from, and it, you know, what matters to them might be different. Some people might care about certain aspects, you know, some people might not value certain certifications because they'd prefer a more accessible price point, you know, like there's different considerations that different people might have depending on what's important to them. But I think what's really important for us as brands is to make sure that that transparency is there so they can gather all the information and make informed decisions on what aligns with their values.
And I guess one of the keys to success is also to keep an open conversation with your clients and customers, to listen to them, and yes, selling direct is not just an act of selling something, but it's also creating a connection between the two of you. I will start taking the questions in the chat. I don't have the names identified to each question, but when I mention that question, if you recognize yourself and you want to open your camera or just say hello, please feel free to do it. So Sheena, I will start with you. We have a question for you directly. Someone asked, have you found your farmers, and what do you think is needed to connect more farmers with businesses like yours?
Yeah, so many of the farmers that we work with today are ones that we started working with back when we were at the farmers market, kind of selling alongside them as a primary producer. So there are some of those suppliers that we have, and then there are ones that we have connected with since. So usually like word of mouth, working through farmer networks, working through you know, people who are familiar with the industry have referred us to folks. There's one of my favorite stories in particular is the farm that we source our pumpkin seeds from is a farm called McKellar Farms in Alveston, Ontario, and they were customers of ours first, right? Like they believed in what we were doing and loved our products, and they were actually buying our bars to you know, have around for their staff and the family. And then over time we got to, you know each other, and they actually started supplying our pumpkin seeds for us. So that was really cool. And, you know, suggestions I would have is honestly, you know, I talk about this in the context of our business having always been very purpose driven, and how, you know, if you're a food founder or in the food and beverage or value add space at all, you know, thinking about how to make your business more sustainable can feel overwhelming because there's already so many moving parts.
Shut down the computer.
Goodness. So you know, my best piece of advice is to just start chipping away at it. So if there's one input that you think that you could source locally to you, start with that, right? Just much like how Made with Local is approaching our organic certification. We are on the path towards a full organic cert. And we're doing it in stages, and our goal is to be fully organic certified by the end of this year. But it's, I'm a big proponent of not feeling like it's an all or nothing, and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just start chipping away at it and find those connections in your community that can help you localize your supply chain.
Wonderful, thank you. Tannis, a question for you. There are a lot of people interested in your products, and they're asking, how can consumers order or access your flower?
My goal was to have our website ready before this, but I don't. So I don't even have all of our flowers on our website. Right now, you're welcome to come to my farm and pick up flower, but you're not in the area, I'm sure. So we just have a few places within Saskatchewan. Ask your local carrier, find someone that you think would like to carry our flower. Our biggest problem is, like, if you want even, say, a 5 kg bag from me, it's getting it to you. That shipping costs as much as the flower. So that's where we're trying to move larger amounts to certain areas so that they can distribute. Because distribution is the hardest part with grains and flour. It's very heavy, so it's very expensive to ship. So stay tuned. I'm going to keep posting as we get into more and more locations. Keep asking anywhere that you're buying flour or ingredients with flour. Ask them where they purchase their flour, and I think that's important.
You're touching, I think, a key element that we didn't cover in our conversation yet, but the power of building collective infrastructures, notably for transportation and distribution in general, to make this happen for a lot of smaller companies. Or, I mean, you're not that small with 10,000 acres, you said. So you have a lot of capacity, but still, as you said, to ship that across Canada is definitely a challenge. Maybe one more question for you quickly. You mentioned earlier that to be organic would require that you till your land, which is something you don't want to do in order to keep the soil healthy and alive. Can you be organic without tillage?
I think there are maybe some out there that have found a regenerative organic compromise, but it's very difficult. As farmers, our biggest enemy is weeds. They will take over everything. So we're very diligent, using cover crops and growing things with the idea, if you occupy the space with something you want, something you don't want shouldn't be able to grow. That being said, it's really important to keep weeds under control because they can spread and take over. So organic, the easiest way to control weeds is tilling your land. And like I said, for us, it's not an option. The erosion, we're dry, it's windy. Actually, even just driving by a couple till fields the other day, we were looking at what we call snert, when the snow is black from all the erosion. Whereas, we cut our stubble really high, and we like to catch our neighbor's snow. And like I said, we're very moisture limited, so we want as much moisture as we can get. So we do use herbicides. And that being said, the technology out there is amazing. We've just invested in a new sprayer, and it has the technology. So in the spring, when we're spraying, it will only spray where the weeds are, nozzle by nozzle. It will only turn on where there is a weed. So instead of having to do a blanket application, we're really targeting where the weeds are. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, to complete that, it's something that I'm hearing not only across Canada, but I would say around the world, how challenging it is to find the right balance between tillage and being organic certified. And I know there are a lot of discussions out there about trying to find solutions, but yes, you at some point, for many farms, you have to make a choice. It's either one or the other, unfortunately, not for everyone, but for most. One general question for the three of you, what policies could Canadian provincial or federal governments change to improve localized supply chain? That's a big one. Any one of you who has thoughts to share on this? It's a tricky one. Well, the only thing I would say maybe to help start the conversation on this point, agriculture and food in general is an enormous, a very big part of our economy here in Canada. So for sure, anything that does affect the economy, our governments will be very slow to make changes or to impose changes. But still, I can see that on a more local or provincial level, there are some initiatives that don't come necessarily from the government, but sometimes they do. Here in Quebec, we have a bunch of programs that have been put in place in the past few years. It was there before the pandemic, but it got even stronger during and since the pandemic to try to not just to protect our market, but to be more independent. So there are some local initiatives, maybe not in your own, well, yes, in your own business, but in your area, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, anything special that is going on that promotes local sourcing more?
Yeah, so in Nova Scotia, definitely there was a report that came out just a couple of weeks ago that was run by the provincial government that was trying to measure how much of the average Nova Scotian's diet or how much of their food dollars, I'm not sure exactly what the data point was, because there's probably some nuance between those two things, but how much of the average Nova Scotian's diet is comprised of locally grown foods. And the number that they came back with was in the 30%-ish mark, which is absolutely not the case. That number is higher than the reality. Absolutely. I commend the provincial government for putting in the work and initiating this research, because we do need to get a better understanding of how much of our domestically grown food here in Nova Scotia is going into the kitchens of Nova Scotian families. We're a province that has one of the highest, if not the highest, rates of child poverty in the country. Food insecurity is rampant here in Nova Scotia. And we do have the capabilities here in Nova Scotia to be able to grow an incredible variety of foods. So I think the real number, when you subtract out, meat, dairy, and eggs from the local food equation here, is somewhere more in the 5% range of non-meat, dairy, or eggs foods that are being consumed that are grown here. So a huge amount of room for improvement, clearly. And I do know that our provincial government is working towards improving their internal procurement to source more local foods. But there's a long way to go. We have a long way to go here.
And one more question that we have that is related to access to capital and meeting the financial expectations of investors. How do you navigate the balance between maintaining sustainable practices and meeting those financial expectations of investors?
I'll chime in on that one as well. Just to start, we've raised a bit of capital in the last few years, just about $1 million, just over $1 million, to help us get our manufacturing facility up and running. We also had support from Farm Credit Canada and a couple of other really amazing lenders to help get that project off the ground. And now that we've got our own manufacturing facility, we are profitable. So that puts us in a better position to go and raise capital, like growth capital, essentially. Our experience so far is that, people are, funders, VCs, angels, et cetera, are definitely interested in what we're doing, and they know that all the trends are pointing towards, more sustainability and you're speaking about food sovereignty there a bit a moment ago, Isabelle, like that being a thing that is more increasingly on people's minds. The thing that we found is that we, in many situations, found ourselves to be either, too big or too small for a lot of the conversations. We're in this sort of awkward middle growth zone where most of the funds are looking for you to be in a, $10-20 million revenue bracket, or there's smaller funds that are handing out, or not handing out, but investing smaller checks. And so we kind of kept finding ourselves in this like awkward middle zone of growth. But anyway, it's my least favorite part about running a business is raising money. I'll tell you that. But with our ambitions, it is something that we will probably need to do about one more time. And that will take us to the space where we know we're going to be able to, take the rocket ship beyond Canada.
Awesome. Thanks. Rachel, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I can jump in. So we don't have any investors here, so I can't speak to that, but we do have some debt, so I can speak to that. And for us, we work with the Nova Scotia Farm Loan Board, which is an agricultural specific lender. And I would say that has been really important for us along our journey to have the understanding of, this past season, for example, we had a frost and lost a large portion of our crop, and so we're dealing with that right now. And there's certain times of the year where we have really big cash flow swings in terms of harvest season and paying for all the grapes at once. So there's a reality there that I think unique reality to it being an agricultural business, and having a lender that specializes in that field has been really valuable for us.
Thanks for sharing this. Maybe a couple more questions before we finish. Someone is asking, what would you recommend to someone who is new in the agricultural space and wants to become more involved? I would guess more involved in the regenerative movement, or and have a more direct to consumers model. So what would you like to say to this person?
I would say become a Regeneration Canada member, step one. And connect with other people. The Regeneration Canada map also throughout Canada shows you other farmers, businesses doing regenerative things. So it's a great tool to try to find connections. But that's kind of the whole idea behind Regeneration Canada, is trying to bring people together, because that's where we can learn the most, is making these connections and talking.
That's a great point. Thanks for mentioning that. Rachel, anything, or even Sheena, any advice you would like to share with someone starting?
I was gonna say the same. Regeneration Canada, I love the farm map. It's a great tool. I know here in Nova Scotia, we're so lucky to have a really robust farmers market culture. And that's one area that I personally have really enjoyed connecting with farmers directly, asking them, about their practices, learning more, kind of, closing that gap, so to speak. So I find that can be a really great community to kind of tap into other regenerative farmers, or as a consumer, if you're looking for, farmers that align with your own values.
Mm-hmm. And even for you, Sheena, I guess it applies to not necessarily through Regeneration Canada, but to as not just as an entrepreneur, but as a consumer, to try to find all those food companies that share the same values and eventually connect with them?
Yeah, I think, there are lots of amazing Canadian grown brands that are on shelves at your bigger grocery stores. But I would say, if you're really looking as a consumer to connect more with Canada's food producers, looking to some of those smaller shops, or like Rachel mentioned, community farmers markets, independent retailers, they tend to have their finger on the pulse of the makers and growers in their region. So, getting off the beaten path of grocery and exploring some of those smaller shops is usually where you're going to find some treasures.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll share one and last question very quickly. I would like actually to ask that question to the Regeneration Canada team and pass you also the mic. So if you want to close our lovely session, although I would continue for a long time because we still have so many things we should discuss. But I like this question. How can filmmakers, storytellers, and artists help the regenerative farming movement? Ali, Paige, Alex, someone from you would like to say something, or even our speakers, if you have any ideas. Or
I think Ali kind of followed a film crew around this summer, so maybe Ali will have something to say on this.
Yeah, well, aside from perhaps collaborating with us and coming along and visiting farms and capturing their stories, like it doesn't necessarily need to come from a plan, like initiative or project. Like if you're a filmmaker or an artist, like you can go to the farmers market, like introduce yourself, and just offer or chat with the farmers and see if they would be interested in having you over. And I'm pretty sure that 100% of the time it will be yes, because a lot of farmers don't have the time to have good quality marketing and photography and videography. So like having these connections with artists, I feel like will help everybody. It will help share the stories with others. It will help the farmers bring their voices louder. So yeah, it's just starting a conversation, I guess.
And if I may add to this, I think from all time, artists have been central in helping the society better understand some challenges or embrace changes and create a movement towards something that is more positive and regenerative in every possible aspect. I mean, the notion of generation is not just related to soil, but also to us as individuals. So I think all the artists do have a crucial or a key role to play in making this change happen. I have a lot of ideas, by the way. So if you want to talk about it, I would be happy to contribute to that. Anyway, I will stop here. It's 7:31. Thank you so much, Tannis, Rachel, and Sheena for sharing all your experience with us tonight. It was exquisite and really interesting. I'm happy that I now know you, and I hope that the people who listen to your stories will get in touch with you also to learn more and try to buy your products and try them. Or anyway, so thanks again for being there.